everybody, welcome back. It's Mrs. E here. I thought since you joined me last week for our ocean animal reports to learn about a scientific topic that we would look at a social studies topic today and learn about a famous American. And the famous American that we're going to be reading about is Thomas Edison. So I don't know if you've heard of him before, but we're going to learn all about that famous inventor today. Alright, so you need a few things while I'm reading if you'd like to do a report with me. You'll need a notebook or something with paper. You can get a loose piece of paper if that is what you have at home. You can also use a mini book. I know if you did my mini book tutorial with me, you know how to make these. If not, you can find out on my channel. You can do a whole little book about Thomas Edison. You'll need something to write with and take notes with. And if you want to decorate your book when you're finished, you can use crayons or markers for that. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started learning about Thomas Edison. These are the main 5 things that I am looking for today in your report. Alright, so I'm going to show it on the screen. If you need to pause the screen, go ahead and do that. I'm also going to show this at the end. Okay, so your report on Thomas Edison, our first sentence or page of your book is going to be introducing Thomas Edison. Okay, now number 2 is his birth date. When was he born? Number 3, what was he famous for? So what was the most famous invention that he created? And number 4 was, what was the most important thing that he did or invented? Okay? And number 5 is, when did he die, or a closing sentence. So you can either put the date of his death because he is passed, or you can just end your writing with a closing sentence restating that you wrote about Thomas Edison. Okay, my friends, so we're going to go ahead and get started. There are a few pictures in this book, so I'll go ahead and show them as we go. And there's a cartoon picture of Thomas Edison, and notice what he's holding in that picture. We're going to learn about what he did as an inventor. Okay? Thomas Edison, he was an inventor, and he lived from 1842 to 1931. The page in the family Bible listing the births of the Edison children was almost full. There was just enough space at the bottom for Samuel Edison to squeeze in his last son's name, Thomas Alva Edison, February 11th, 1847. So that's an important date there. Thomas was a happy, curious child. He giggled and laughed as if he knew a joke no one else knew. Smiling, Thomas watched his family read, sew, play games, draw, talk, and work. As he grew older, Thomas enjoyed exploring his world of Milan, Ohio. He stared down his backyard hill at the busy shipyards below. Men loaded boats, wagons rumbled, and sailors sang. While he studied the world, Thomas ran his fingers through his hair and tugged on his right eyebrow. Thomas Edison kept these habits all his life. When Thomas couldn't figure something out himself, he asked questions. Do any of you ask questions when you want to know more about something? His patient mother didn't mind answering Thomas's many questions. She knew Thomas was unusually bright, and bright means very smart. Sometimes Thomas's curiosity got him into trouble. One day he watched a goose sitting on her eggs. Thomas tried an experiment. He sat on some eggs too. Oh no. The eggs didn't hatch. They broke. Another time, Thomas was curious about how birds flew. He knew birds liked worms and birds could fly, so Thomas mixed worms and water. He begged a friend to drink his flying mixture, but his friend didn't fly. She ended up getting sick. Ooh, can you imagine eating water and worms? Ugh. There's a goose sitting on her eggs. Very funny. Thomas Edison's very curious. The Edisons moved to Port Huron, Michigan. When he was 8, Thomas went to school. His teacher didn't like the boy's many questions. He thought something was wrong with Thomas's brain. When Thomas's mother heard what the teacher said, she got very angry. She took Thomas out of school and taught him herself. Thomas Edison never returned to school, so his mom taught him at home. Thomas loved to read. He read college books when he was 10 years old. He even tried to read every book in the Detroit Public Library, shelf by shelf. Thomas liked to experiment with chemicals, magnets, and electricity. His parents let him make a laboratory in his bedroom. When one of his experiments exploded, his mother ordered him to move the lab to the basement. Mrs. Edison was worried that a friend might accidentally drink some of Thomas's chemicals. She told Thomas to label his 200 bottles of chemicals. He labeled each bottle with the word poison and decorated them with a skull and crossbones. Thomas knew what was in each bottle because he had memorized the contents. Wow, he's a very talented guy. Thomas became interested in the telegraph, which used electricity to send messages over a wire. The messages were in Morse code, a system of electric signals that represented letters, which could be used to spell words. Messages could be sent quickly over telegraph wires across America. So back then, instead of a phone call, because they hadn't invented those things yet, they could send a telegraph to somebody and they could tell them a message through that. If you'd like to learn more about a telegraph, I highly suggest you look up a video because they're very interesting. And there's his bottles of poison for his experiments. Thomas easily mastered Morse code. He stretched his own telegraph wire to a friend's house. The boys sent messages back and forth until a cow tripped over their wire and ruined their telegraph. Oh no. When Thomas was 12, he sold newspapers, fruit, and candy on a train. He used the money he earned to buy more equipment and chemicals for his experiments. He also wrote and printed his own newspaper while riding on the train. That's very cool. And if you'd like to see what a picture of a telegraph is, here is one here. The conductor, however, got angry with Thomas one day and threw the boys' equipment off the train. Oh. Then he hit Thomas in the head and threw Thomas off too. Thomas felt something snap in his ears. Thomas lost some of his hearing. When Thomas was 15, he saved a little boy from being hit by a train. The boy's father gave Thomas a telegraph job as a reward. Thomas got even faster with his Morse code because he trained his fingers to feel the vibrating sounds his ears no longer heard. Thomas continued experimenting. He invented a vote counting machine. He created a fast machine to track stock prices. Much to his surprise, a company bought his stock machine for $40,000. Thomas quit his job, bought more equipment, and did more experiments. He opened a lab in Menlo Park, New Jersey, and hired dozens of men to help him experiment. Because he was partially deaf, which means he partially couldn't hear anything now because of his accident, Thomas was interested in how vibrations made sounds. After many experiments, he invented a machine called a phonograph to reproduce sound. Thomas recorded himself saying, "Mary had a little lamb." This was the first time in history a human voice had ever been recorded. Now we can record things all the time, but this is the very first time that it had ever been done back then. How exciting. Thomas turned his attention to light. People had gas lamps to light their streets and homes. Thomas wanted a cheaper, safer source of light. After hundreds of experiments, he created an electric light bulb that burned for hours. Soon people were turning night into day with Edison electric lights. So we use light bulbs at home pretty often. I actually have one right here in this lamp. Big light bulb right in the top that's able to help me see. And I don't have to use a gas lamp like they used to. And I could turn it off and on super easily, which is what he was going for. Thomas Edison was world famous. He was invited to the White House. He had friends like Henry Ford. Thomas didn't stop inventing. He created the first movies. He made better batteries. He developed stronger concrete, which is what sidewalks are made out of. At the end of his life, Thomas tried to invent cheaper rubber for tires. Thomas Edison died on October 18, 1931, when he was 84 years old. Over his long life, Thomas Edison, the Wizard of Menlo Park, improved the lives of millions of people around the world. And there's a phonograph, which is how he was able to record and reproduce sound. All right, so I think Thomas Edison is a fascinating person in history. He was a very important inventor, and I read about a few of his inventions today. If you'd like to research some more of his inventions or learn more about him, feel free to look up some information with the help of your parents online. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go over our report criteria again with you really quick, and then you'll be off to do your writing today. All right, so here we go. Thomas Edison. Sentence number 1, you want to introduce Thomas Edison. So you can write a sentence like, my report is going to be on Thomas Edison, or here are a lot of facts that I learned about Thomas Edison. Something like that to introduce who you're talking about. Our sentence number 2 is going to be his birth date. So if you don't remember that, you can rewind to the beginning of the video or you can look it up online. Number 3, what was he famous for? You can write more than one thing or the main thing you think he was famous for. Number 4, what was the most important thing he did or invented? So we read about 3 of his inventions and saw pictures of them. Which one do you think was the most important invention for us now? You can go ahead and write that and you can tell me why. And our last sentence, you can go ahead and close up our report by saying that he passed away on this date, or you can just use a closing sentence like we did at the beginning and say, those are all the facts that I learned about Thomas Edison. Something like that to close up your writing. All right? So I hope you enjoy writing your report about Thomas Edison. If you like writing reports about people like this, you can go find some really amazing people who are famous Americans or just famous for doing things around the world, and you can write all about them too. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody!